Very good afternoon. Thank you all and welcome you to this seminar. We've got a great panel here today, and we also got almost a full house. So we're going to have a very wonderful discussion this afternoon. I hope you have enjoyed the annual conference so far, and if you get a little bit sleepy now, maybe you can also grab a coffee, something. I know it's a little bit difficult to do a session right after lunch. Today's topic is on the implementation challenges in delivering renewable energy transition in emerging markets. As you all know, across Asia and beyond, we all recognize the urgency of scaling clean power and clean energy. Many governments, international financial and organizations and bilateral financiers have committed to putting more and more money in supporting renewable energy transition. Take AIIB as example. In the past 9 years, we have financed 28 renewable energy projects in 16 countries, with the total financing amount of all those projects more than $10 billion. While we are mobilizing more funds, we also know that translating project approvals and financing packages into results on the ground is rarely straightforward. In fact, the implementation of renewable energy projects have always been very, very challenging. Today, we got a panel of 4 practitioners to talk about those challenges, whether it's technical, financial, or environmental, social, regulatory challenges. And we will also discuss how to overcome them. We're aiming to ensure we can deliver results on schedule and on budget. Let me first start by introducing our panelists. Then I will proceed with a few questions to spark the exchange among us, and finally open the floor for follow-up and audience inputs. So first, let me introduce our panelists. I'll start with Mr. Rabia Fattal. He's the CEO and the managing partner of Sustainable Infra Capital, SIC, an infrastructure investment platform of Swisscorp. With over 20 years of experience in private equity and mergers and acquisitions, Rabia has been leading Swisscorp's investment in solar project in Bimban Solar Park in Egypt. Some of you may know that solar park at that point of the time is the first and the largest solar power project in Africa, and maybe also the largest one in the world at that time, with a total electricity capacity 1.4 gigawatt. Just a disclaimer, AIIB together with IFC, BII, POPACO, African Development Bank, provide financing to 11 solar projects in that park, including the 3 projects sponsored by Swisscorp. All 11 projects have already been in operation since 2019. Sitting next to Rabia is Mrs. Pavika Tanvirakasan. She is the CFO of Impact Electrons CN Company Limited, a pioneering developer of renewable energy projects with a strong emphasis on delivering clean and reliable energy for Asia-Pacific region. With over 15 years of experience in greenfield infrastructure development, project finance, and M&A, she currently oversees financial strategy corporate structuring, investment planning, and fundraising for large-scale clean energy infrastructure projects, including the groundbreaking 600-megawatt monsoon wind farm project in Lao PDR, the region's largest cross-border wind energy initiative. This monsoon wind project is co-financed by AIIB, AIIB, and 6 other lenders. Construction has started in March 2023, and the project is on track for completion before end of this year. Now let me turn to the other 2 panelists. They are bankers. Mr. Edwards Bonstanners is the head of the Asia and Pacific Division at the European Investment Bank, AIIB, where he oversees AIIB global public sector lending operations across Asia, Central Asia, and the Pacific. Since joining the AIIB in 2005, he has led operational teams in both the European Union and the partner countries. Edwards was a board member of Lux Flag, a responsible investment fund labeling agency in Luxembourg. Our next speaker is Alok Dayal. He's the manager, project, and asset management of the portfolio management department at the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. His team monitors a diverse portfolio of both FI-owned lending and also private sector financing projects across various geographies. Prior to joining AIIB in 2019, Alok held senior risk and credit leadership roles at the IDFC Limited and SBI Capital Markets, where he worked extensively across sectors such as power, transport, logistics, and real estate. So now please help me welcome the distinguished panel with a round of applause. Now, let me go back to my seat so we can start the discussion now. I'm going to ask a question to 2 project sponsors first. For the renewable energy project, during construction, during the implementation period, we often see lots of construction and technical delivery challenges, right? So as a project sponsor, can you name one of few common implementation delays that may come or caused by those implementation challenges, and share with us how you evaluate and manage them? Shall we start with Pavika first, please?
Sure, thank you, Ke. First of all, I would like to thank you to AIIB for the invitation for me to join this esteemed annual meeting. Now, before we get into Ke's question about the construction challenge, maybe just to give the audience a bit of background of Monsoon Project. So, Monsoon Project is a 600 megawatt wind farm project. It is located in southern part of Laos, and then it will sell electricity to Vietnam's EVN under a 25 years PPA. Now, the uniqueness of Monsoon Project is it's not only the first wind farm in Lao PDR, but it's also the first cross-border renewable energy to sell power cross-border in ASEAN region, right? So for IES, we started develop Monsoon Project back in 2010, but then it's not until 13 years later we achieved a financial close for the project. At the time, we raised $950 million from AIIB, and along with 7 others lenders, senior lender, DFIs, commercial banks, and together with 5 different sponsors. As of today, 2025, we are in the phase of commissioning, and then we are expecting to COD the plant, hopefully in July, this coming July. So again, thank you for the opportunity today. Now get back to your question about the construction challenge. So construction challenge for monsoon project is very critical, right? Because if we look at monsoon project, we have a fixed deadline for COD under the PPA, meaning that with only 1 day delay under that PPA, it means there's no tariff, there's no project. So for the team has to be very careful in how we plan on the construction of the project. But on the other hand, if you look at the aspect of the project, it's 600 megawatt. The land coverage is over 60,000 hectares of land coverage. There are altogether 133 wind turbines. It's been ocean transit for a month until it lands at Thailand's port in Lam Chabang, and it has to travel over 1,000 kilometers to the site area. At the peak time, there are over 2,000 construction workers at site. So if you look here, while on one hand we have a fixed deadline for PPA, on the other hand, a lot of things can go wrong, right? So how did we manage that risk? How did we manage that challenge, right? First one, I think it started not at the construction, but way before that, right? The way that we designed a key project documents for the project, it has been well designed, well managed, so that all the project risk has been well allocated among each of those project agreements. The PPA, the concession agreement, the EPC contract, as well as financing agreement. So first, take a time to prudently design the key project agreement. I think the second key success factor for monsoon project is we invest in in-house staff to take an on-hand approach to supervise the project construction. So for us, instead of relying a lot on the owner's engineer to supervise the construction on site, we send a lot of in-house staff to oversee that construction. The reason for that is that for in-house staff, they have a lot of sense of belonging. And then we assign for each of the person who's responsible for which zone, who's responsible for which activity, so that they have close monitor of the project construction. And then if there's something that goes wrong from the plan, we as the owner of the project knows firsthand, not through the advisor, but we know firsthand. So that's a second key success factor for monsoon project. And then third one, but very important one, is the communications, right? As of today, we've been having a weekly meeting within the organization for over 6 years now. Every week on Monday, the team has meet up, led by our managing director, Kun Nat Hutanuwat, and then accompanied by the key leader of each discipline, from the technical team, construction team, E&S team, finance team. Everyone sit together in this weekly meeting, discuss the progress of the project, discuss the challenge we have, and then we brainstorm and then find a solution together as one team, not as different team. So I think that's how we tackle the challenge for construction. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Pavika. Now, Rabia.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? It's fine? Okay, great. Thank you for the invitation once again. Maybe I'll start where Pavika ended, which is coordination and communication is very, very important. In our project in Bamban, as you mentioned earlier, 1.4 gigawatt in one site, which included about 13 developers, about 6 or 7 EPC contractors, all building at the same time. So that really took a lot of, I would say, planning, coordination, communication, to a point where we ended up having to come together as developers and recruit a company just to manage the site. coordinate entry of construction trucks, delivery of equipment, and so forth. So really, I would say planning is very, very important, especially when today in renewables projects are becoming much bigger and requires a lot of planning, logistics planning as well, so delivery of equipment. I mean, at some point, we ran out of equipment, you know, the piling machines which are required to set the trackers in the ground. We ended up having to import all of that. So I think that's planning is very important. The other element as well, which I think maybe to put into perspective, specifically in our experience in Egypt, is try as much as possible to bring in local resources. I think eventually local resources will save a lot of time and cost on your project. So actually, what we did was, even though this was a first of a kind in Egypt and nobody's built solar projects before to that scale, we spent a lot of time at the beginning educating the local community and training them on the whole construction process. I think that eventually ensured that we ended up meeting our construction schedule and causing or having a good impact on the actual community as well. And so I think these are probably the two main things. Of course, I'm not going to take away the important point, which is make sure your contracts are well aligned with the right back-to-back LDs and damages to ensure that you're always protected.
Very good, very good. Thank you for sharing insights from the project sponsors. Now let me turn to bankers. From financiers or lenders' perspective, how do you, you know, trade and monitor and you know, these challenges, or we may say risks, right? How you try to help the sponsor to mitigate? Shall we start with Edward S., please? Thank you.
Well, thank you first of all for inviting me on behalf of the European Investment Bank to be here with this distinguished panel, and also I'm really happy to see so much interest in the audience. Thank you very much for being part of this 1 hour session. So maybe some of you have been following the news, and you saw that last week EIB's European Investment Bank shareholders, our governors, ministers of finance, have approved an increase in the EIB's annual lending ceiling to 100 billion euros, 100 billion euros per year. And that makes EIB probably the single largest multilateral investment bank in the world. But the question here that of relevance to this panel is, how do we make sure that we are able to deploy these quite significant amounts to projects that are bankable and also that are constructed and technically delivered on time? And for that purpose, let's say EIB has developed a very distinguished model where I will be happy to share some of the details here with you. One of the distinguishing features is that EIB has an in-house directorate with dedicated engineers, economists, and specialists. And they are very specialized. So you have a railways specialist, you have a water economist, and etc. So no project at EIB can go forward unless the experts give a positive assessment of the project. And that allows EIB to avoid those sort of how do you call them, flying elephants, or some dreams that sometimes there are very strong incentives to finance. So EIB has historically been very resilient to resist that. Another, maybe something that is more specific to the EIB, but other organizations I think are also adopting similar approaches, is that we apply European Union standards when we finance our projects, irrespective of project geography. And what this means is that we don't believe in dual standards. So one standard for the European Union, and then the other standard for Asia, and another standard for Africa. No, we have one standard and we uphold it. We want all projects to be excellent. In our understanding, of course, excellent technically, excellent financially. Now, one feature that we as EIB and AIIB, Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, share in common is we have very limited presence on the ground. I think we do have a bit more because especially in Africa and in neighboring countries, but for example in Asia we have 4 offices only. This means we do tend to rely a lot on the promoters' capacities on the ground. And one of the, I think, first efforts we make is to increase the capacity on the ground. And one of the, let's say, standard features, what we do and many other, of course, our peers do, is establishment of dedicated project implementation units, PIUs, within promoter institutions. So the combination of the two, one is the internal knowledge and expertise, and the knowledge on the ground and expertise and strengthen that. I think that is, let's say, the model that we are promoting at the EIB. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward, for sharing this very unique kind of approach from EIB. Now let me turn to my colleague, Alok.
Yeah, thank you, Ko. I think it's a great opportunity today to be part of this discussion, talking about, what actually happens on the ground in projects. So as you know, this is the implementation stage is when the rubber meets the road, like I say. And seldom things go perfectly as per plan. There is always, you have to adjust. I would like to just focus on the construction part of the risk today, because that's where most of the risks lie initially. Like my colleague here has said, yes, I mean, there's a saying that, among lenders, there used to be a saying at least, that you can do a bad project with a good sponsor, but don't do a good project with a bad sponsor, So, the assessment of the sponsors and the EPC contractors is very, very essential to understand their financial strength, their track record, the experience, and the capacity to, handle issues. So that is something lenders always look at, when we try and enter projects. Of course, in project structuring also, there are aspects which we usually look at. So in construction, there's this element of delay in implementation, which may give rise to increase in project cost and loss of cash flows. So what lenders do is, in the project cost itself, they have some structures in place sometimes, for example, like contingencies or fixed price EPC contracts with proper LDs on the contractor to ensure that things are in time. Sponsor support for completion, because, that is something we are relying on the sponsors to complete the project. That's only when the cash flows come in. So that's again, and of course, we rely on a lot of advisors and consultants for the technical and the environment and social aspects of projects, I'll just give you an example. In one of our, I'll not name them, of course, but in one of our solar projects, the project got completed, but there were severe inverter issues, because of which the generation was not at all coming up to the expected numbers, right? The electricity generation, because the inverters were tripping, they were faulty. And there was a whole root cause analysis done, which lenders discussed with the sponsors, and we got it done. And then all the inverters had to be replaced because they were faulty. There was something wrong in the design, right? And this is where the performance bonds, which the the contractor had given to the project was brought into use, we encash those performance bonds and replace all the faulty inverters, and that's only when the project technically stabilized and started generating cash flows. So just an example of how proper contractual structuring actually helps projects get out of the rut in which they find themselves in sometimes.
Very good. In fact, I'm going to turn to these financial challenges. But I see we now really get the full house here, and the discussion also getting more interesting now. Thank you to everybody. So let me turn to the financial commercial challenges. Right? In emerging markets, when we are doing this renewable energy project, we often see cost overrun, right? And the inflation challenge, and also the foreign exchange, volatility issue that come out quite often. So, how should the sponsors, again, I go to sponsors first. How should the sponsor address? Maybe I go to Rabi first.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, actually. And again, I think taking it to the actual, I mean, in our opinion, if you structure a project in the right way contractually, you should not be exposed to cost overruns or to FX or inflation. And in our project in Bemban, we opted for a lump sum turnkey contract, fixed price, which is what you were talking about earlier, Alok, which of course gave us the right protection against any inflation or cost overrun or delays. And it was structured in a way which ensured that whatever liability we had under the PPA for a delay in startup would be transferred to the EPC contractor. So I think that is definitely the most important mitigant to this risk. And then I think following that, monitoring is very important, because you want to see the problem before it happens, not after it happens. Once it happens, it's very difficult to then catch it and get back to it, because having a contractual structure that is protected with, let's say, the right LDs is good, but actually you're still going to have to fight those in legally and so forth. So you really want to catch problems before. And I think monitoring, as Pavika said earlier, constantly, weekly calls with the contractors, meetings, in-house team, not just owners, a third party. All of those are important to ensure that you end up delivering on time. Yeah.
Just add on that, the foreign exchange.
Yes.
We know, at some points, Egypt really, the Egypt pound has been up and down like that.
Of course, I think from our point of view, foreign exchange was not an issue during construction, but it became an issue during operation. So because during construction, if you opt for a lump sum turnkey contract that is fixed in price, you're not exposed anymore, neither to inflation or FX. But when we started operation, of course, we had certain FX issues, mainly due to availability of US dollars. And I think from our point of view, from this project, we opted for actually an interesting insurance that was offered to us by MIGA, which was primarily covering the availability of US dollars in the country. And MIGA was able to deliver this insurance because the PPA was supported by a Ministry of Finance guarantee as well. So it was quite a solid structure that was offered, and I think the Egyptian government worked very well on it. So that gave us some protection against FX, but I think at the end of the day, the availability of US dollars will, in a specific country, especially in emerging markets, will always be a risk that you have to manage and live with at some point.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Pavika.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more with Rabia regarding how we structure the EPC contract. I think similarly to your solar project. So our monsoon project also have this fully wrapped EPC turnkey. So that's already a big chunk of the investment cost for the project, right? The one additional thing that I would like to add is on the financing cost, because that also accountable for quite a big chunk of the project cost as well. So for monsoon project, the financing cost is linked to the floating SOFR. What we did was at the time of financial close, we enter into interest rate hedging so that we fixed 70% of the debt exposure to become a fixed rate, so that we can control and make sure that the project cost that we forecast is actually within a budget. And then on top of that, I think still contingency is important to factor in, right? Because regardless of how well you manage the contracts, the cost, there's always the unknown at the time of a financial close. So contingency is also important in terms of some buffer into the investment cost. So that's for the CapEx, capital expenditure part. Looking a bit further, right, if you look through during operation phase, looking through the P&L of the company. So from the revenue, I think the way that we structure and negotiate the power purchase agreement is that the tariff is a US dollar payment offshore to a Singapore bank account. In terms of the foreign exchange currency, so we make sure that the currency is all aligned throughout the period, meaning the EPC contract is in US dollar, insurance during construction is in US dollar, the financing cost, the debt fundraising is in US dollar, the revenue is in US dollar, the key O&M contract is in US dollar. The debt service is in US dollar, so there's no mismatch in currency in this case. So the PPA fixed tariff, and then in terms of the generation. So for monsoon project, as I mentioned earlier, we started develop 13 years before it's actually financial close. So during that 13 years, we install a wind measurement met mast to measure the wind data in that region. So what the benefit of that is that by the time that we achieve financial close, we have significant amount of wind data on hand to predict a wind resource with very limited uncertainty. But then on top of that, how we structure the debt sizing is that we use P90 case in terms of debt sizing to make sure that when the project becomes operated, even in a year with bad wind, we can still be able to service the debt. And then a very last point for me in terms of how we mitigate the financing risk is how we structure the financing package for the project. Right? So for this project, the composition of lender is composed of 8 different lenders. AIIB is kindly one of that. Composed of multilateral agencies together with commercial bank. And then the benefit of that is that usually for MLAs, you'll be able to provide a longer tenor. So that means that there's less pressure in terms of an annual DSCR of the project. And then the repayment is spread across a longer tenor. And then also the mobilization of concessional financing so that the certain risk of the project can be mitigated through this construction financing package. Thank you.
Quite a comprehensive response. So Edward, I know EIB provide both sovereign and non-sovereign financing. But you are still going to face this kind of a cost overrun issue in your project. How EIB respond?
Yes, it's a very good and pertinent question. Even if you finance public sector projects, and my domain is public sector, but I really relate to also what more private promoters, sponsors are saying. I think everybody is reading the news, so we see the costs are rising, supply chains are interrupted. Of course, we see also foreign currency volatility. So that, I would say, what we are talking about is no longer an exception, but it's more of a norm of it is happening, and we have to deal with it. So I wanted to give an example of the importance maybe of two things. One is the project design. When we are designing projects, how we can anticipate, and the second is this more on the monitoring side, what was said. And I'll be very brief because this is a topic that you can spend maybe hours discussing. So I'll give you an example. We recently launched in Bangladesh a so-called Bangladesh Renewable Energy Facility, BREF for brief. And it consists of three components. So we have provided a sovereign loan of 350 million euros to the Ministry of Finance. This was supported by 39 million EU investment grant mobilized from the European Union's budget. And the purpose of the EU grant is specifically to mitigate some of these financial deviations, let's say, because the projects are ultimately implemented by respective power boards or power utilities. So they are the ones who are implementing the projects, and that is supposed to give them a bit of financial room and flexibility. It also serves another purpose, because the topic of this panel is on renewable energy. And as you know, some of the projects, such as batteries, storage, energy storage, sometimes they require this investment grant to be bankable from a commercial point of view. So we give this almost a discretion to the ministry to fine-tune where they feel from economic, financial point of view, this investment grant could tilt some of the projects into the bankability sphere. And that would help also ultimately to attract private investors because the scale of task at hand is just enormous. Probably some of you know that Bangladesh specifically, their renewable mix in the energy is in single digits. There is a lot of work to be done. So there is space for everybody. Then the third element, which I already referred in my first intervention, is the technical assistance. So with the European Union, we have mobilized 6 million euros technical assistance. Most of it is dedicated, in fact, for monitoring purposes, but also feasibility preparations, so to make sure that we actually do get the pipeline of projects that then we, European Investment Bank, but also others can finance, because we don't have at the end the sort of exclusivity. And last point, what I wanted to say is usually when we finance a project, we are one among many financiers. What we have in place very often for projects is some sort of mutual reliance. So we do have this with all Team Europe financiers, but also with others. And mutual reliance, in fact, allows us to foresee some steps and who does what when things go wrong. And I've seen so many projects where the MRI at the end was the lifesaver at the end for the promoters, but also for financiers, because it allowed us to smoothen out many of these obstacles as projects were implemented and they had to face. So that's briefly from my side. Thank you.
Very good for sharing the public sector financing perspective. Alok, you are managing AIIB's private sector portfolio, so can you share with the audience?
Yeah, so I guess we are talking about if there are, after the approval of the project, if there are, what are the challenges in implementing and how do we deal with it? So like some of my colleagues have mentioned, I think the approval stage and the structuring of the project is important. So, ensuring that the contractual structures are in place and the sponsors, and of course, ensuring the robustness of the project. So when we approve projects, we do a sensitivity analysis to see whether, because all assumptions will not be like remaining the same. There would be fluctuations. So I think structuring the project based on robust financials is the first step. But even then, if things go wrong, then lenders like most of the lenders, including us, we have a watch list system where we start closely monitoring these projects. We do more frequent internal reports, internal ratings. We work with the sponsors to understand the problem. And for example, in some cases, we have allowed the funded, the DSRA, debt service reserve account, to be converted into a bank instrument so that those funds are released for cost overrun purposes, So we do work with the sponsors. In another case, I recall it was a gas-based project and it got delayed beyond the repayment period, So not only was the funded DSRA used up, we also helped the sponsors get working capital facilities to mitigate the short-term requirements that were there. And of course, the contract was robust, so the EPC contractor also took a hit on some of their financials to ensure that the project got completed. Like we were discussing before this panel discussion also, AIIB is financier on the sovereign and the non-sovereign side. So we have relationships with the government at various levels. So sometimes we also make representation to the country government in case there are factors which are completely beyond the scope of the project and which are affecting the financials, to see if the government can take a more practical and reasonable view on the situation. So we have made representations in cases of, let's say, foreign currency convertibility issues and PPA tenures getting relaxed for certain force majeure kind of events.
Yeah, very good. Before we open for Q&A, I still want to ask another question. I think it's a very, very important question about the ENS, environment social, because we know, it's quite a, of course, it's very important for us, right, when we're talking about a high quality project. But it's also a challenge for project when you are implementing them. So again, I ask our sponsors to share with us, how you manage those risks, such as, community opposition, land access, and also oftentimes this occupation safety and health issues coming out from the workers, from the EPC workers particularly. Yeah, so this environment social risks, how do you see them, and how did you actually manage in your projects?
Maybe I can start.
Okay,
I think it's actually one of the most important risks, to be honest. Again, at the end of the day, you want to make sure you build the project and you build it safely. And in an environment where you're doing something for the first time in the deep south of Egypt, with a peak of about 10,000 people on site building the whole 1.4 gigawatts. We had a lot of stories to share with you, a lot of funny stories, unsafe, unfortunately. So I think the way we mitigated this was mainly engaging with the community from day one. Even before construction started, we had several community seminars which covered introduction of the project, introduction of the activities that the local community should expect during the start of construction, and then of course safety rules were very, very important, and we started educating people on those before we even recruited the teams. I mean, it was very important because they've never seen such a scale. And I mean, as simple as the forklift driver driving the forklift without shoes Can you imagine? Barefoot. So this is the kind of mentality and educational uplift that we had to deal with. Cars driving people to site with no seat belts. Again, very simple, and you would think that they should, it's given that these things do exist, but actually they don't. And so we ended up through, again, a very engaging communication with the community and all of our contractors, subcontractors, sub-subcontractors, because the problem is, as a sponsor, you are responsible in front of the lenders to make sure that you comply and everybody else complies across the value chain. So, and I think for that, it's all about education and communication at all times, and monitoring as well. I mean, monitoring is very important. So that's what I would say about that.
Vika, please.
Yep. From Monsoon, I think we've learned a hard way on ENS aspect, right? So we found that there's very tight, close interlink between the construction team and then ENS team. Taking example for Monsoon, right? Before the construction team start to enter into any certain area for construction, there has to be a permit to start work process where ENS team and construction team comes together and then give a green light for the construction team to start construction. Which means that the delay in giving out this ENS aspect permit to start works, meaning a delay in construction, and meaning delay in delivering the power. So what we did for Monsoon project is we set up the mindset that there's no such a thing as ENS team's problem and construction team's problem. Everything comes into its Monsoon project, its Monsoon team. Again, going back to my earlier point, right, that the communication among teams is very important. So it's very important, so it's significant to make sure that everyone has the same goal within the organization. For us, the goal is so that the construction can be completed on a timely manner, but with the minimum impact to the environmental and social community that we operate in. And also I would like to also emphasize on Rabia's point, right, that it's the earlier that we engage in ENS study, ENS work, the better. If possible, even before construction, when there's the constructability survey, if the developer could simultaneously do an ENS survey to understand what kind of social and environmental impacts that has to be carefully managed. So the better that we have time to manage those risks, and then the less pressure at the time of construction.
Excellent. So now let me turn to two bankers again. So what would be the lender's role and the responsibility in managing these environmental social risks and help sponsors address them?
Well, I will probably not answer all aspects of your question because it's very, very broad, but I will tell you something that is maybe specific to AIIB and maybe others have something in common. So ESG is for us not a secondary consideration, it's a primary consideration. It's one of the core operational requirements. And we do have, as all other MDBs, mandatory transparency mechanisms. What EIIB has maybe on top is that for us to submit a project for approval to our board, the environmental and social documentation, including the impact assessment, has to be published 30 days before the board. So usually it has to be published both on our website and also on the website of the promoter. This is supposed to give at least a certain notice and an opportunity for public scrutiny, for civil society feedback, and crucially, it allows local communities to be informed and consulted, because sponsors, they know that this consultation process has to happen before they can secure financing. So it's, I think, very, very important to do as much work upfront as possible. Because once the construction starts, the trees are cut, communities are displaced, and sometimes it's too late. So it's very, very important to think, in particular, I would say for energy projects, renewable energy projects, they tend to be, by and large, very much sort of space demanding to generate comparable capacities in terms of energy. Then second, things do go wrong sometimes, and we do have independent complaint mechanism, and I'm sure that all MDBs do have, and the function of the independent complaints mechanism is to allow affected people, including local communities, to raise concerns in a structured and transparent way. And it also obliges us, the financiers, to provide remedies where such are needed, and adjust implementation as well, where appropriate. And in fact, a lot of these provisions are built in our financial contracts. So we do have the legal mechanisms how we can go back to the sponsors, and we can insist on remedies. So I will stop here because there are a few other things, but thank you.
Yeah, indeed, it's a very important issue. We can talk a lot, but Alok, let's...
Yeah, so I was very happy to hear some responsible sponsors here, because like they rightly said, the earlier you start on this, on the ENS, the better it is. As lenders, we get in a little bit late for non-sovereign projects, but I would like to say that as soon as we get in, we also form a team comprising of environment and social experts within our organization, along with the financing teams, who do a comprehensive due diligence, on projects. So basically, there is a, with the help of consultants and with the help of our missions, comprehensive due diligence is done. There's an environment and social impact assessment that is done for projects, based on which, and we also ensure that there's a proper environment and social management system that is there, adopted by the borrower, which is satisfactory to us, which can deliver on the environment and social framework that we have. Like Eduardo rightly said, this is a primary concern for us, a reputational issue for MDBs, and something that is a policy requirement. We don't really have much leeway on following the ESF. So we do ensure that, and then if there are any gaps, these are formulated into our environment and social action plan, which is then closely monitored along with timelines to see that the borrower or the project is delivering on those timelines. Like my colleagues have said, nip it in the bud as soon as possible before it really blows up, which can become reputational as well as impact the implementation of the project. And also at the time of each disbursement, we ensure that the compliance of the environment and social conditions is met. So we do monitor this very closely. One other aspect which I'd like to touch upon is on the GRM, the grievance redressal mechanism, because on an ongoing basis during the implementation and also during the monitoring of the project, the GRM is satisfactory implementation of GRM is a good feedback through which we can learn about grievances in the worker community and also in the impacted communities, and take corrective actions at that level before things get out of hand. The last point I'd like to say is that we, of course, like we mentioned, we do analyze and review the sponsors and the EPC contractor credentials. But like Rabia was saying, there are subcontractors and subcontractors, and sometimes they don't have the capacity to really implement things on the ground. So in some cases, we have also, as a lender, we have engaged a social consultant to help get things moving on the ground, to have a framework, to have a process, and to see that these are being implemented. So building capacity at the ground level is also something at least multilaterals do take an active interest in.
Excellent. I think we are really on schedule for this session. So we can open for Q&A now. Anyone who has question, please raise your hand. And do we have mics for them? Or otherwise, you can speak loudly.
Hello, my name is Sergey Kim. I'm from Uzbekistan. Thank you all panelists for the quite good, impressive speech. Our company, we do environmental social impact assessment in Central Asia. Especially this topic, very, how to say, impacted on me. And I have one question. Do you have, in your experience, stories when after the post-construction fatality monitoring activities, the project or projects have been stopped by lenders or someone else? And could you please share mitigation measures, if any? So we are talking about like post-construction fatality monitoring on biodiversity, environmental, and social. So in your experience, maybe some, how to say, stories or something like more like, because for us it's very important because in Central Asia we just only started developing renewable energy projects. And now we do post-construction fatality monitoring. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the good question. Shall we respond now or pick up a few more questions? How do you think?
I didn't understand post-construction fatality?
Monitoring, yes.
Fatality?
For birds, for bats, and for biodiversity. For example, for flora and fauna, when projects, especially wind projects, impacted on bat and birds. And during the implementation, it should impact.
You are asking about the monitoring, how we monitor those?
No. I am asking if, in your experience, you have stories when projects stopped after the, such kind of bad results of post-construction monitoring results. So.
Yeah, of course, we have stories like that. But it happens in two forms. One is actually project can be constructed or partially constructed, and then the grievance is raised. The question is whether grievance will be accepted or not, and that depends on the strength of the grievance itself. So if grievance is very strong and our independent mechanism decides that it is strong and credible, then they actually will use those contractual clauses to even stop the construction. When you refer to post-construction, so let's assume it has been already constructed. There are also ways to influence resolution of these grievances. We had also cases like that, in particular in South Asia, I would say, based on my experience of so far. And I'm talking about Asia only, because there are other. And usually the process is very lengthy, because it involves also legal mechanisms and also the sort of paralegal mechanisms. And very often we deploy also probably institutions like yours who are mediating, because sometimes it is the best way to achieve an outcome, in particular in resettlement issues. Because people might have been moved already, but they are grieving that they have not received compensation adequate. What also happens very often is that some groups of people have been properly compensated and others not properly, in their opinion. Why? Because maybe they are not directly impacted but indirectly impacted. And then they know that other groups have been properly compensated. They are asking for the same level of compensation. And in the European Union, we have maybe a little bit higher standard, and then this comes to, let's say, has to be addressed, and it is not a very, let's say, easy way to do that. But what helps is having very experienced sponsors. Because and really I liked how you also presented your cases, when a sponsor is experienced, they already anticipate a lot of these issues. They do proper community consultation, because all these steps, the more proper steps you do, the easier it is later to address this. And the last point, what you said on biodiversity, very often once you have destroyed biodiversity, it's very difficult to restore it. For example, if you have fish in a river and you build a hydropower plant, which is renewable energy, and you cut the river, then the fish will not be able anymore to reach, and then they will be gone forever. So there are some of the elements which you need to properly assess, and you need to take a decision whether you want to actually proceed with this project or not, because there is always, development also is a trade-off between those sometimes conflicting objectives. And that's why the work like your organizations do and also civil society does is very appreciated and is extremely necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. The other gentleman, yes, please.
Hi, Director General Fang. I'm He Zhijun from the World Bank Social Protection and Job Global Practice. So I'm curious, given AIIB's portfolio experience across diverse emerging economies, could you elaborate on the specific de-risking mechanisms that have proven most effective in catalyzing private capital mobilization for renewable energy infrastructure? And also additionally, I would be very interested in the panel's perspective on how multilateral development banks can better structure blended finance instruments to address the particular challenge of currency and regulatory risk that often constrains long-term renewable energy investment in the emerging economies. Thank you.
Would you like to quickly respond?
Yeah, but this is not the topic we are discussing today. So private capital mobilization is one of the a core, kind of strategies that we have, which we are expected to do. So, many times we become the anchor investor who then draws in a lot of other local banks, sometimes who also become B-loan lenders, because they have the cover of us as a multilateral bank, and then. We have also started doing some partial debt guarantees, which would help, other institutions take more exposure in projects. So the fact is our risk appetite, the tenure of our loan, et cetera, and the fact that we also are very open to look at new technologies and new products and projects in countries is very helpful to sponsors to then attract other lenders. For example, in the case of Rabia's solar projects, this was the pioneer solar project in Egypt. There was no solar project done before that, and AIIB with a couple of other lenders stepped in. And that created a whole ecosystem, which now gives rise to a lot of other renewable projects in that whole region, not only in Egypt, but the region as a whole in the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge, to be honest, is in attracting private capital, is having good structured projects. Today, I think, from my experience, is that, if you have the right project that is structured in the right manner, you will never struggle to find capital. I think banks are open to risk if it's structured and dealt with in the right way, and even private investors as well are open to risk. But unfortunately, not all projects that are in the market are structured in the right way, because a lot of these projects are, by virtue, I'm talking of renewable energy, are sometimes started by landowners who might not necessarily understand bankability, who might not so that's why actually, we come in, institutions like us or investment platforms like us, to elevate the structural documentation of those projects to make them bankable.
Just to add on, if link to our implementation challenge topic here, when we talk about bankable projects, it's not just on paper. It's really talking about you have to factor and integrating some of this implementation risk into the consideration, into your financial structure, and make sure these risks are properly assigned, allocated, and will be managed. Because those risks can happen, and oftentimes, as our sponsor mentioned, they did happen during implementation, right? So it's not just about a simple financial modeling, right? It's really, you have to factor in the real challenges from the ground. Yeah, I think we still have a few more minutes, can take a few questions. So please.
Yeah, this is Shailendra from Portfolio Management Department. Thank you so much for the insightful answers. They are really, really good. I have a question regarding the regulatory environment framework. So there are certain risks, of course, we can build in and structure while we are structuring the project. But I'm more interested to know, has there been any instances wherein you have seen regulatory challenges because of the changes in the regulatory environment? How you have navigated through those and how you have addressed? Any practical examples? Thank you.
Maybe I can answer that one. So I think in ASEAN region, right, we don't have a framework in place to facilitate a cross-border power trading. So in our case, it's a bilateral negotiation between the seller and buyer, who's EVN in our case. So we spent a long time negotiating with the off-taker to make sure that the contract is bankable in form of a non-recourse project financing. And I think that's the challenge for us in terms of regulatory framework, because there's no existing framework available. We have to spend a long time doing negotiations. So I think for the region to promote more private investment, to promote the cross-border energy trading, I think it's very important for the government to have this, to form this framework to promote this for private investment.
Thank you, Fabrica. I think we can take one last question.
Hello, thank you very much. My name is Juan Pablo. I'm from Colombia, from SONIAP, a solar energy company, EPC company. So my question is, how can you handle, or what pieces of advice you could give us regarding how to handle communities, especially in regions where there used to be, or still there are, some oil and gas projects? Because people, like the communities, don't understand that those are different kind of projects. Budgets are different, so they are used to more generous benefits, let's put it in that way. So, and that could be a problem, because people don't distinguish between a solar farm and an oil project. So how to handle that in order that the community don't become a problem but an ally without affecting the budget of the projects? Thank you.
Would like to, yeah?
I'll give you an example. I mean, show them your financial model. They will see your return and they'll know you're not an oil company. No, but in reality, again, I think you need to engage with these communities from the beginning. I mean, we actually are developing a wind project, without mentioning too much detail, in an area which is known for oil and gas. And yes, of course, we're competing with the oil and gas industry, even for employees and for land. And I think when we first started engaging the community, everybody thought we had deep pockets. And you know, when we went to the town hall, they wanted us to build 10 schools, universities, and so again, I think we had to educate them about our role. And actually, we turned it around in the context of us bringing a new technology to the region. So creating new skills for the community. So it's how you spin it to the community from the beginning. And then, of course, I mean, I did not shy from telling them that, you know, we do not have as much headroom to do all of these. But we will help as much as we can, and eventually they will understand, because at the end of the day, once they start being integrated and employed by these projects, they will belong to them, so it will help then the community, the word spreading around and so forth. So I think that's my experience. But it's a good question, actually, because it's happened.
Actually, I really liked your question because that was the question I asked last week when I was in Bangladesh. I said, well, this solar farms, they take so much land, and you don't have land here in Bangladesh. How do you deal with this situation? And they said, well, first of all, we think beforehand about any potential resettlement, and in fact there is a now good, well-established model of building new communities. And building a new community means, first of all, you build houses that have all utilities, so water, electricity, sanitation. They also have schools in those communities. They have even additional services that community might need, all thought through. So you take into account community's benefits before you start the project. Second, during the construction, you might be able in a position to offer direct and indirect economic benefits. When there is a construction, there is more labor force required, and you could draw some of the labor from the population, from the community, but you also usually generate secondary effects such as more commerce, more trade. And even after construction, you have certain maintenance requirements. So I would say for promoters, for sponsors, it is probably worthwhile thinking about longer-term engagement for these renewable energy projects, because they will be there for many years. And then technology keeps on improving. So what is working now, this, let's say, solar panels, in a few years' time will need to be replaced. So you can repeat this circle. So I think that renewable energy has a lot of positive potential, and that was one of the, let's say, more recent for me discoveries when I started asking questions like you, but here, of course, we have many experts in the room. I don't know if that answered you, because obviously you cannot maybe compete in terms of cash handouts, and that is another situation. But I think it is very difficult to discriminate, and I don't think community will accept being discriminated unless they see that they are being treated equally. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I think we are close to the end of this session, but before we close this session, let me ask a last question to the panel. I want to ask each panelist just name one action you would like to recommend to future sponsors, future lenders, so that they can take into consideration to handle all the implementation challenges. So let's start this side from the other side. Alok first.
Yeah. So I think the point I would like to stress on is a proper contractual framework where risk and responsibilities are clearly laid out, at the contractor level, at the subcontractor level, at the borrower level, and the capacity of each of the parties to implement them. I'm looking at ENS risks, I'm looking at technical aspects. So I think there's a lot of risks that come when these things are not in place. So these are the points I would stress on. The normal financing structuring everybody knows, but the proper contractual structure and the parties having capacity to implement their responsibilities.
Well, I would say one thing that spring out to my mind and is purely based on this discussion is think global, act local. And I was thinking of these questions about how do you promote the right incentives on the market in terms of regulation, and there are many successes. For example, I think there was somebody from Central Asia where there are very good legal regulatory reforms that have proven to be extremely effective in mobilizing private investments in renewable energy. And I think this would be my takeaway. We need to create this type of depository where governments could draw from and implement those best in-class practices in their countries. Thank you.
3 from me, sorry, Ke.
That's fine. That's fine. I know you have a lot.
First, be a believer. Second, be resilient. And then thirdly, be perseverance. This is something that our company's founder always emphasized to the team. You have to believe that we are doing something for good cause. And then you have to believe that you can challenge the status quo. And then, of course, along the way of the development, there will be a challenge, there will be a problem. So you have to be resilient and then ready to tackle the problem one by one. And then lastly, perseverance, because you just have to keep going, keep pushing, and then always go back to the first one, believe that you're doing this for good cause.
I'll be very quick. No, I mean, honestly, last point in the context of what everybody else said, I think projects belong to the community they're in. So always start by communicating with the community.
Thank you. We have a very, very rich discussion today, and the panel also gave a very nice summary at the end. So please join me to thank this great panel.